Yeah, good evening, everyone, and good morning to folks in the other part of the world. Uh, we are back as Indo-US VCP, bringing another enlightening session on the edge of where investment happens in the VC world, both sides of the globe. So the name of the group which we are a part of is called Indo-US VCP. The idea was to bring the best brains, both sides, and learn from each other what's happening in the uh, North American continent versus what's happening in India in terms of the VC action. Where are they investing? Why are they investing? Is it slowing down? Is it hastening? Is it a bubble? Right. So that's the idea of this group. Of course, Vivek Ramakrishnan is the core person besides Team Sarthi and of course Pushkaraj, because of which we are all together as a group. We've got around 40 to 43 members. It's meant only for VCP folks, both sides. And how it all started, I'll give a 1 minute background and then I'll introduce the speaker about today's session. So, Sarthi is almost 5 years old in India. What we bring to the startup world is our strategy framework. Right? We use the strategy frameworks to assess and enhance investment worthiness and then give access to investors. We've got our angel network in India with 520 angels, which we use for co investing. We'll recommend the deal to partner VCs, family offices, and angel networks, and we'll co invest up to a 1 crore INR into it. And uh, so it was a logical extension launching in the US because we felt US also it's spray and pray or hit and trial for the investor ecosystem. And of course, the funding winter was not ending for 3+ years. So we set up a US entity almost a year back. Preetham joined us, Pushkaraj joined us, and of course, Rishikesh and Vinay are a part of Team Sarthi US. We plan to bring the same frameworks to assess, enhance investment worthiness. And our $51 million fund is in the journey to be launched by June 2026. In fact, my visit is overdue. I had planned earlier in 2025, but finally March 2026, I've got my visa. So March 2026, I'm in SF. Me, Rishikesh, Vinay will be all meeting and we'll be working towards setting up the fund by June 2026. Again, co-investment. And of course, AI is the theme of the season. 40+% of investments in the US are happening in AI. So we'll be also looking at AI investments and deep tech. These are the two major themes, but we are sector agnostic overall. We've got D2C investments, we've got other investments also. So energy investments in India. We've got total 19 investments in India. Yeah. So, but we want to learn. And I've been warned US is far ahead, different. So, and it's less heard of someone from India trying to, I think there are more than 10,000 applications of Indian startups to Y Combinator. So someone from India setting up the US is something new. But we believe our frameworks are universal. They'll be applied in all places. In fact, they help us slow down. In fact, I proudly say that we are anti-hype. So whereas US, it's 40% plus AI, for us, it's only 20% still. And that's also for the Indian ecosystem, right? So we still believe by traditional metrics of how much paying customers, what is the traction, right? So what if it's a hyped idea? But today is a day to learn. And I'll the first session we did was on quantum computing. It was led by Dr. Vivek Ramakrishnan, and he took us around quantum computing funding. There are startups in the US who are valued at more than 10 billion also pre-revenue in quantum computing. So he explained us, we were all students of quantum computing that day, almost 3 months back, when he took us through his understanding. And he said, quantum computing, if you treat it like a faster computer, you are in a big misconception. It's far different than a faster supercomputer, so to say. So we learned and we are still learning. A lot of quantum computing is understood. A lot of it is still getting understood by both investors and founders. But yeah, it's nice to see that a lot of funding is getting attracted, and people believe it's the next revolution after AI in the US. Right? But the second field which we were keen to understand, we announced in that session only that we'll be understanding how to scale using AI. And I'll play a small video before I introduce Rishikesh. And what's our understanding this side of the world in India in terms of AI? So I'll quickly play a small video for you on how today's name came in. In fact, I don't know how many of you were able to digest the name of the AI era and how is it different versus AI investments before. So I quickly play a 1 minute of a 11-minute video, and then we can go into Rishikesh's. It's going to be a fireside chat only. So we are both understanding AI investments, AI scaling, reaching multi-million dollar ARRs as AI companies downstream. So we'll understand all that from Rishi, and then we'll go into the fireside chat also. But quickly, you can go through this 1 minute. I'll play.
These are the top 1% AI companies in the world, and they are
Sound clear?
Harvey, which is an AI tool for lawyers, hit 100 million in revenue in less than 3 years. 11 Labs did that in 21 months. Cursor did that in 12 months, and Lovable hit 100 million in revenue in 8 freaking months. I wish all of us could do that. But these top 1% companies have done something that the other 99% are just not aware of. And a super interesting report by A16Z, which is, by the way, one of the biggest startup investors in the world, breaks down the reason behind this crazy growth into two simple words: the great expansion. Let me explain. So, Olivia Mu, a partner at A16Z, who has written this report, says that this crazy hypergrowth is possible because AI has fundamentally transformed revenue retention patterns, especially for consumer software.
Yes, so I'll pause here. So the topic of today is the great expansion using AI and how AI has transformed scaling for software. Consumer is a misword here, but we'll understand using few case studies. He mentioned a few in Harvey, Cursor, Lovable. What we'll be looking at is Character, Mercor, and Midjourney in our conversation. One is B2B, two are B2C, but that's what we'll be understanding. And is it hype? Is it bot top line or so we'll also look at it sarcastically while we are into that conversation. So I'll introduce Rishi. Rishi is been in Samsung and Toshiba before he entered the startup world almost 8 years back. And he's been associated with Techstars, Plug and Play as a mentor. And he specifically looks into AI startups. He's a fractional chief growth officer for quite a few startups, both on the hardware and AI side of the play. He's, of course, based in San Francisco. And he's an advisor to Sarthi for almost 5 months now. So great to have you, Rishi, in this conversation. I'd love to understand your perspective on the great expansion using AI. I believe lots to learn for Indian startups because I'll give you a quick snapshot of what is happening in India. Our highest valued AI startup is Sarvam, and Sarvam pivoted from one to the other. And today they are a sovereign AI model for government. So they are kind of accessing trillion bytes of government data and see how they can leverage that to help government govern better. Right? That's what they pivoted to recently. There's Cure.ai who's doing medical imaging, but they're all sub 100 million ARR. And the names we are talking about is less than a year to reach that 100 million ARR figure, which is really dramatic. Some are even non-funded, like Midjourney is bootstrapped. They've not raised a rupee of funding and they are almost 500 million ARR. Yeah. So over to you, Rishi. I won't take away more of the play, but we'd love to understand from you your analysis of these hyper growth, hyperscale journeys, and then we'll go into the Q&A mode, Rishikesh.
Thank you, Girish. This is a very fascinating topic, indeed, as somebody who is advising startups on how to grow. These startups, unicorns rather, have grown really fast, and not just grown fast, but with very lean teams. So it's always fascinating to understand how they did it. We can only speculate. So we're all in the learning process here. I've talked to many startups, and I see the same problem, many of the same problems that startups struggle with. But these are the few that really broke that ground, and it's always good to understand why. So, when I start thinking about lean startups, of course, the book Lean Startups come to mind. It was written many years ago by Eric Ries, and it talks about the cycle of building, learning, building, measuring, and then learning from that, and then it goes in the loop. Now, this is nothing new, and everybody knows this book. And in Silicon Valley, we pretty much do it all the time. I mean, not just Silicon Valley, any startup in the world. That's pretty much the way you kind of make it happen versus many big companies. In big companies too, you see this cycle, but not on steroids. Worked for Samsung and many big companies. Yes, there is innovation, there is learning, all that stuff. But in startup, the cycle happens really, really fast. But I mean, a lot of startups claim to do that. So what is different of these unicorns? Now, if you look before generative AI, I mean, a lot of people say, yes, generative AI helped these startups, but no, there have been lean unicorns even before the AI wave came. There are good examples. There's WhatsApp that was acquired by Facebook for $19+ billion, only had 55 employees. Again, Instagram was acquired again by Facebook with $1 billion and only 13 employees. There is no generative AI there, right? So it was done before, but after generative AI, of course, you see more and more of it. So let's understand what are the common factors, even without generative AI. Now, when I look at some of these startups, these are like the must-have. You cannot become a lean, big startup without these basics things. And one of them is you really have to understand your customer and make sure that it's making money. And I mean, this is very basic. When an investor evaluates early stage startup, there are essentially three things they are looking for. That whatever this startup is doing is a business, it's not a hobby. That meaning that there is a potential to make money after you pay all your costs, etc. And second is you cannot just make small money, you are able to make a lot of money. It's not going to cap at 1 million or whatever. It has to have a huge market. And the third is team. The team has to be rock solid. And a lot of people take this team aspect very lightly. And I will say that the unicorn startups that we are looking at, the lean unicorn startup, this is where I think they really excelled. All the examples we have is from Silicon Valley. And when I was talking to one of the investors before, the investors give premium to Silicon Valley startups. And I asked him why. Innovation, there are smart people everywhere. Innovation is everywhere in the world. However, Silicon Valley has this ecosystem and a force multiplier. If you are a founder, you are having problems. There are many other founders you can physically talk to. We have examples of. And in the startup, again, it goes back to the loop. How quickly can you learn? So in Silicon Valley, there are a lot of people you can just talk to and learn. In many cases, it's not what you need to do, but what you not need to do. So stop the paths that other people have figured out are not good. So in Silicon Valley, of course, it happens more intensely. It's happening more and more so in many other parts of the world. But that is one reason why VCs give Silicon Valley based startups a premium. And I can see how that may have played a role in all these three startups we're going to talk about. We'll come to that. Clearly, they are Silicon Valley based startups. But before that, I want to go back to what makes a startup unicorn. So I started talking about you really have to focus on customer. With a regular startup, you are just saying that, okay, I'm making money. Now you have to go beyond that and say, how can I make my customer really, really happy, really solve a problem? The money that comes out of it is a result of that. Um, um, if you add a lot of value, the customer has a lot of willingness to pay you part of that value. And as a rule of thumb, there is something called a no-brainer pricing. So if you're adding $100 worth of value to a customer, the customer would not think twice before he gives you 1/10 of that, so $10. So the more value you can add the customer, the more money they will give you, and that directly translates to your profits, revenues, etc., etc. So that focus on value is extremely important. And if you look at Airbnb's CEO's interview, I remember a long time ago, he was obsessed with creating value for its customer. The startup was based in San Francisco area. It started here, but their initial customers were in New York. So they moved to New York so they can be close to their customers. And when he went and talked to those customers, he asked them, uh, not just how would you rate the Airbnb, but he asked them, what would make this a five-star service for you? The customer said, A, B, C, whatever. But he knows that the customer is not going to tell you everything. They're just going to be nice. He really wanted to get to those difficult portions where they have to speak up. So he cranked it up and said, how can I offer you 7-star value? And eventually, how can I offer you a 10-star value? That's where a lot of customer feedback started flowing. And it's that feedback and obsession with the customer value that really made Airbnb different. And you see that again and again in the unicorns uh, of the world. Girish or anybody have any comments?
Yeah, eager to understand the AI game in this, Rishikesh, of how
Yes.
AI is helping in this, right? The 7 months, 100 million ARR. Is AI there? CTO, is AI there? Developer, is AI there? Chief Growth Officer, right? So, what is the role of AI in this? That's what my curiosity is around.
Yes, AI is definitely shaping these already promising startup to be more leaner and meaner. Uh, but I mean, anybody can claim that, right? AI is a force multiplier, not just for these unicorns. They are force multiplier for many other startups. But these are the guys who have really leveraged it really well. So coming to the startups now, I was CMO for Sprouts AI, which is recruitment automation using generative AI. We had a lot of similar features to what Mercor has, but ours was not nowhere close to as successful as Mercor. So that is the startup I know the most. And of course, we'll bring a lot of examples from there. Uh, uh, so um, if you look at their founding structure, Mercor's founding structure, there are three founders. Two guys are technical. One is not so technical, but they all grew up in Silicon Valley. The CEO grew up in Menlo Park with startups around him. Um, and he was a seller. He had many like small businesses even during his high school days. So he learned how to sell things, what makes money, what customers want. He had that knack. And as they continued to do their education on the East Coast, he started this business of providing, hiring people out of IITs back in India and providing some software value to the company. So that hiring and software, all that kind of, they already had that experience. So what that enabled this team to do is to not really have sales and marketing team because one of the founders already had some of those skills. And I think what made a difference, again, goes back to the obsession with the customer. They made the product um, really try to add value to their customers. So when I was working on that recruiting software, to be honest, the thought was like, yes, we are finding employees for these companies. Like, so it was just like, okay, get resume, get job description, and do a better match than LinkedIn. LinkedIn is pretty bad in terms of matching. So you just had to beat LinkedIn and other manual matching. With generative AI and its semantic matching, it's not that it's an easy bar to cross, but that was not enough. So what did Mercor do? They went again to the customers and they were obsessed about. So the customer, these companies who are hiring, they don't just want a matching employee, somebody whose resume matches the job description. They want employees who are going to be successful. So how do you predict that? That's where Mercor really worked. Everybody can can have access to the database of resumes and database of job descriptions, but how do you know that the person you hired is going to be successful? So Mercor went ahead and got feedback from their customers after 15 days, month, or whatever, and learned from that. Again, it goes back to that iterative cycle, and was obsessed about who really succeeds in the workforce. That's what added real value to the end customers. And when the end customers really love your product, you don't need sales marketing team because your customers are going to grow how much business they do with it. They're willing to pay you more. They're going to help you get more customers. In case of Mercor, that happened also on the people who are getting hired side. Mercor was obsessed with how can we give them a career path. And so even on that side, it was easier for them to multiply and expand and use that networking effect. That's pretty powerful. And because of these characters, when you obsess with customer, how do you add so much value with your customer? Of course, they had technical talent to make it happen. Um, but that's what enabled them to not have a lot of marketing teams, et cetera, and become bigger while staying lean.
Lalit has a question. Lalit, you want to ask your question? Go ahead.
Sure. Hi, Rishikesh. So you mentioned that Mercor went back to their customers and received some feedback, right? Everybody has access to that database. When they received that feedback, did they create like a custom internal database saying, when we place this kind of person, these are the values which added and made the company and the candidate successful for the company?
Yes, so uh, they had learning from like what characteristics really make the employee successful, and it impacted how they interviewed, what questions they asked. Some of their interviews talk about how some of the non-technical aspects are important for employee success. Um, and the other side impact of that is once you know, let's say for a software engineer, what are the success criteria, part of it are only related to the software engineer, but there are other criteria that are universal. And when you implement the solution, let's say for hiring lawyers or doctors, there is some cross-learning there. So when you go and help other company hire lawyers, you are going to give them a much better match based on all these other learnings from other companies. And so the value that this customer gets is a lot more than what was even possible before.
Thank you.
Um,
In fact, one or two data points on Mercor. Mercor is the fastest growing startup in Silicon Valley. And I understand that they are not providing you employees, they are providing you human in the loop needed to refine foundational models. So it's more like gig workers who are get paid per hour or per task rather than a typical employee which a LinkedIn or any other platform would provide. Am I correct on that, Rishikesh?
yes, that is what, the claims. Or, I have no way to verify or deny that
They pivoted
from my
actually
side.
to this. I read about them and they pivoted to this versus the traditional. So it's basically smart labeling or intelligent labeling of so much of foundational models need that labeling. So Mercor is one of the top providers of that too. So Facebook acquired a company in this domain, and therefore Mercor became the go-to place for everyone besides Facebook. Right.
Right, right. I mean, those were their initial big customers that they charmed, and really that helped them grow. Once you have these brand name customers, then of course, uh, you don't need marketing and sales, right?
Yeah. So
But
Mercor is
what is also
B2B.
interesting, so
Yeah,
sorry,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
So Mercor is the only B2B, the other two are B2C. So maybe the parameters are different for scaling B2C versus B2B also.
Yeah, so when you look at Character AI, um, they did not really go out and do this customer charming by because they didn't really even know what the application was. What they did and focused on was just building a good product. Of course, the founders were at Google for a long time and had worked on many of these similar things before. And so the team was extremely technically strong. And I mean, having worked at Sprouts AI, I know you can claim you have so many AI engineers, but getting something implemented in AI is extremely, there's still not that many talent, right? So, Character AI really has very, very strong talent to get to implement whatever the product that they had. And uh, uh, although they did not, I mean, it's a B2C product, so customers invented their use cases, which the founding team really had no idea. They just focused on building a good product, what they thought was a good product, and the use cases just multiplied. Uh, is it a
Interesting.
luck? I don't know. I'm sure the luck plays a good part in there as well.
Sure. Interesting.
Yeah, Midjourney, the founder again, very strong founder. He had his previous experience with Leap, uh, and in that startup, he learned a lot about staying away from VCs and staying lean. So that influenced how he shaped Midjourney. For the longest time, they did not want any funding. It was all self-funded, and it was on purpose, very lean. Um, yeah, again here, I really don't know how much of a customer research they did, but again, the team was very strong, and they built a very strong product. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
they bootstrapped to 500 million ARR actually. Bootstrapped to 500 million ARR in 4 years.
Yeah,
That's the power of idea. You don't need to invest
and
money.
Noam, he made some money in the previous startup, but I don't think the indications are not that he made a lot of money. So he had unlimited amount of money to funnel there. So when yes, you have some money, maybe a few million that you start with, and you can you build it and grow it so that you are lean from the very beginning. I think that's what resulted them in becoming continuing to stay lean even after they became a unicorn.
Yeah, for folks who don't know, Midjourney is a AI image generation tool. They are basically a AI image generation tool, which technically other LLMs can also do, but Midjourney is doing it better. That's why they've got millions of users and 500 million ARR revenue. 50 employees only, by the way. Midjourney has only 50 employees. Mercor has 30 full-time employees. So that's their team for 500 million ARR.
Yeah, I want to caution people when you hear about 30 employees, etc. So these are full-time hired like employees. Of course, these companies have teams, in India and other places where they outsource a lot of non-core stuff. Um,
Yeah. So
and
anything
I
else,
mean,
or we
and
can go
that
to
could
Q&A?
be,
Yeah. Go
yeah,
ahead. Go ahead,
and
Rishikesh.
and that is one strategy to keep lean. You really figure out what you need your employees for, and only hire the best employees. I know I have worked with many startups, and they usually it's convenient to hire interns and people with not so much experience, and uh, uh, people who do not have experience in the right to make your startup successful, and because you can get them for cheaper salary, etc., etc. But um, that may not give you the best outcome of your products, etc. I mean, having said that, if you look at Mercor, they're all young people, 22, and they became a lean unicorn. But I would caution that these young kids are extremely, extremely talented. They all grew up in Silicon Valley. Their parents, etc., were always guiding them what not to do, what to do, what is good, what is not. That definitely helped them. And I think a couple of those founders were national debate champions. So these guys have excellent communication, which is a skill that is often ignored in this startup world. Um, uh, yeah, they were, and I listened to one of the interviews where one of these founders said, "Oh, after 2 years, we were already making 1 million in revenues, and uh, I had to drop out because school was not really adding value." And then he made an important point that the value of your branded school is getting in, and it doesn't matter whether you graduate from there or not. So that was very insightful. I mean, a lot of us think that, okay, I went to IIT, so I'm a true IITian only because only after I get a BTech degree. But this guy completely shattered that notion for me. It's like, no, the value is getting in. He in fact said 90% of the value is getting in. So anyway,
And do you see a bubble or a hype element in these three case studies? Or do you believe that it's still early days? They'll only grow from here.
um, that is a difficult question. For Midjourney, sorry, for again, Mercor, hiring is one of the largest markets. So, and these guys are constantly evolving. Initially you start with these computer AI engineers, and you grow to a certain extent. You have revenues, and now you have enough ammunition to hire the best people and expand it, expand it, expand it. So, I don't really. As long as they're executing the same way, the market is really big. Um, Character AI. Again, a strong, very strong team, but they have been hit by lawsuits recently, and because of that, they had to put a rein on what they can do. There's also legislation happening, etc. Um, I mean, there are many applications which the founders themselves didn't know, so it continues to surprise them as well as everybody else. So. It's not as obvious as Mercor.
Understood.
Raj, you had any question?
Nope.
Okay.
Sorry, should have been on mute.
In fact, one more comment was that happy to see that in the last year or so, most of these are scaling up in downstream AI versus the LLMs, which were taken away most of the limelight till a year back. Everybody wanted to build a LLM, but I think that has moved now downstream. How do you apply AI for different use cases?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's what these people are doing.
Yeah, that absolutely true. I mean, the initial way was the LLMs, and I think that market is pretty much uh, it's like you know who the winners are, and the bigger portion is the applications. Lots and lots of applications, and that's where you see these startups, right? But that does not mean the application would not have some elements of LLM. They are using some training, etc., etc. It's not that you can just take these base models and you do prompt engineering to become a successful startup. You still need to do some model building, not the whole model, but so you still need some of that skill to really make a difference and stand out from your competition.
Yeah, my last question before we go to the question. Do you believe they have a strong enough moat, or is it too early to comment? Like anybody else can build another Mercor or another Character.ai or another Midjourney?
For Mercor, their moat is really the data from the customers, like what makes things really successful. You cannot get that data elsewhere, and it's locked in their versions of the models, not anywhere else. So if somebody has to uh, disrupt Mercor, they'll have to recreate that or find other places where they can add more value to the customer. So I think Mercor's moat is pretty strong. Character.ai and others, I'm not really, I don't really have much comments on that.
Or like OpenAI says, we can build what all these people are building, right? And we've got more data or more moat than them. So will they come downstream? Will OpenAI come downstream and build similar models or similar solutions for their customers? And therefore, they have got already 10x customers. So it's easy for them to upsell, like a Microsoft upsells everything else when they sell their Windows.
Yeah, I mean, when you are working on general models, you're looking at all different applications and everything. Yes, these models will get better and better. It will have more data, but you'll never have access to all the data. So there is a lot of data locked in corporate silos and many other places that is just not available for OpenAI. And if you have access to that data and you build your models on top of that, then there's no way OpenAI can touch you.
Great. Great, Rishikesh. So I'm done with my set of questions. We are open to the audience. Unless you want to add anything else, Rishikesh, before I open for questions.
No, let's
Great.
take more
So we are open
questions.
for questions. Happy to take questions from the audience.
Do you think these three companies which you mentioned, I think the video which you shared, Garish, right? The 30 seconds to 1 minute that in 2 years they reached 100 million or whatever the
Yeah.
number of years
Yes,
were.
less than 2 years, yeah.
Yeah, but in the next 2 years, do you see revenue jumping? These are popular names, and I've heard Mercor, I hadn't heard, but Midjourney, I know, Character.ai, I know, several others, Lovable, for example, I know. But does it slow down from here, or does it still hyperscale from here? Your thoughts?
So there are two answers to this. When
Sure.
somebody hyperscales from here, or rather, somebody grows faster than these startups, then people notice. Others are just ignored. So you will only hear when somebody is faster than it. So I'm sure in future there will be other things, innovations where there will be tools available to go faster than even now. Uh, so I have no doubt that will happen. What will enable that, etc., we don't know. But
Understood.
there is no news when somebody's not growing as fast or as the fastest. I think it's just news bias.
Okay. Go ahead, Raj.
Am I answering your question right? Or
Can I go next?
Yes, Raj, you
yeah.
can go ahead.
Yeah, just wanted to learn from you. What is world AI, world models? That's something which I've heard, but I haven't really understood. Wanted to learn from you if you can throw some light on it.
No, I don't. I'm not. I'm not going to be able to answer that fairly.
Okay, no problem. No problem.
Yeah, Vivek is also, yeah, Vivek, you want to take that question? What is world models, Vivek?
Sorry, I don't know the answer to that either. So
Okay.
I've
So
not
we'll
heard about it either. I'm deep into AI stuff, but I've not heard anything about world models yet.
yeah, me too. So yeah, it's not something I'm familiar with. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
I tried Googling, but it was all Latin and Greek, so I couldn't understand much. So I thought I'll Never mind.
Oh,
Don't worry.
it definitely increases my curiosity to know more about it and do some research.
I've heard of sovereign models. Yeah, many countries want to build local models, like India is also trying. I've heard of sovereign models a lot, but word model is something I've also heard for the first time, Raj.
Okay.
Yeah, Pushkaraj, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Rishikesh. I would like to know your thoughts on in from the investor perspective because while assessing a startup, one of the ways AI startups differentiate themselves is based on training data. So, apart from that, how do you evaluate a moat for an AI startup when the models are getting commoditized? Doubling down on the comment that Girish had mentioned otherwise.
Yeah, I will go back to the data. All the data is not universal. So, how is startup building their own data? Not just data, it's the learning from the data that helps add value to the customer. How well are they doing it? How much are they focused on that? I think I will give a lot of weightage to that. Because
Right.
I mean, if you just look at the data, and there are multiple startups. Soon they will have few pilots, and they tend to start getting the same data, similar data. How do you translate that into value? I think that's more important.
And
Hi, I have a question.
sorry,
Sorry, you can go
Go ahead,
first.
Jane. Yeah, you can go ahead first, Jane.
no, Jane, go ahead.
Oh, oh, thank you. So I just want to ask a question, like how do you evaluate like that kind of like revenue or like do you like let's say if there's a early stage startup, like they just launched their product, like but it's only for like a couple months and they probably only have like let's say hundreds of thousands of customers, and then like how do you evaluate whether the business are doing is a good business, because there's so many AI like startups out there, and like what kind of criteria would you look for to assess whether this business model or the thing that they're trying to do is successful in the longer term, like let's say like next couple months or next year. Yeah, thanks.
So the way I understand your question is, before the startup starts making revenue, how do you know? Uh, okay. You mentioned hundreds of thousands of customers. So, I mean, by that time, I would hope they have revenue. I mean, this is not Twitter. Um,
No,
uh,
as I understand this question, Rishikesh, she's asking whether, like, we are seeing the AI bubbles. OpenAI is making trillions of dollars investment. The payback may take more than the life of, right? So that's her question. That how do you understand from the investor perspective the risk and return? Are they making money today, and will they be making money in the long term? That's the question. Correct, Jay?
Yeah. Thank you.
okay. Um, I think if you're an investor, you pretty much know that initially the startup is not going to make money. Even if they start making revenues, they're not going to be profitable because you keep investing. Um, so for the longer term potential, I would look at um, the some sort of a unit economics. When things are at scale, this is how much investment you are doing. You need to quantify the value that you are adding to the eventual customers. And even if the first few customers are not going to pay you in cash for that value, eventually others will pay. So, how does that add up? That's one thing. Another thing is how much can it expand? Like in case of Mercor, you start with software engineers and then you can go across many other areas of hiring. I mean, I can even go further and, why just limit it to the hiring? Once you have an employee in once you know what makes it successful. Let's say I get promoted from manager to director, then the criteria is very different. So you can start predicting that and offering training. So it's like so many ways you can expand with the same core knowledge or the key strength you have. So that is like a multiplier. So that would be a factor in my decision um, to
Yeah.
predict the success. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. That's very helpful.
Yeah, Pushkar, you had a foreign question?
And
Yeah, on a diff
I just wanted to say that you cannot ignore the team. I'm assuming that the team is solid in all these cases. There are many ideas and ways to make money, but if the investors believe the team cannot deliver that, then nothing can go.
Yeah,
Cool.
I wanted to ask about the physical AI for physical applications, like um, building, designing of the aircraft that I seen. One of the AI is trying to train on the construction materials, and the material has been used for aircraft construction in the past, or the structures, and then applying them to efficiently build the future aircrafts. What are the trends that you are seeing in this sector, and as an investor, how should we look at this sector?
So if you're an investor, you're looking to multiply your money fast. So what will multiply that money fastest is um, the scalability aspect. The moment, and that scalability is easier in software world because duplication does not take much time, et cetera, right? The moment you go towards deep tech, more physical stuff, the initial use of AI is kind of limited to finding new materials or whatever, right? Which is good. You're doing much better than before. But for the startup itself to scale, you're still stuck with the limits of how quickly you can produce that material, et cetera, et cetera. So for many investors, that growth is not good enough. But there will be a lot of other investors who think this is still much better than, let's say, the stock market or other forms of investment. So, yes, it does impact many other aspects. But it'll just have different investors, I think. And I think even from some of these very successful Silicon Valley investors, there are only so many software use cases you can have. So at some point, you have to say, where else? And then they start exploring deep tech, space tech, and many other places where the growth is not going to be as uh, phenomenal as software.
Got it. Thank you.
I have speaking of like physical science or deep tech, my field isn't more like biology or medical stuff. So I heard Mark Zuckerberg always trying to talk about, virtual cells and stuff. So for these kind of, like the models like BioHubs or CEI are doing, because it's based on super complex, kind of like, data. Most people in academia, like people around me, like professors, they think doing a virtual cell is kind of like it's nearly impossible, like in their perspective, because the data we generate doesn't really, like we even researchers don't really think that it's like it's the truth. It is really what's happening inside a cell because we're just observing things from the surface. And so I wanted to know like what does the investor think like when you're trying to create this like huge complex like AI like model to do science like biology. Do you think that it's like what would be your comment, or what would you think about like Dr. like trying to do this? like really adventurous, like step of doing like a virtual cells, like, complex models like this. Yeah.
So I don't really have background in healthcare. So I personally, when I'm a very small angel investor, and I stay away from healthcare because I don't really know that field as well. But um, what I can say is, um, knowing some of these health related issues, body is extremely complex. I mean, any biological organism, etc., is extremely complex, and what you see on surface is very little uh, than what happens inside. And multiple different combinations of inside can give you the same observable results outside. Um, and so in all of this, humans were able to figure out, okay, if you see a combination of these several things, then you can kind of isolate it's more like this or more like this. Um, what AI can do is it can make this whole analysis 10x more complex, or I don't know, 100x more complex. So that was not possible before with just human skills. Um, and it will definitely be much better than what we have today. I was reading about um, you know mental illnesses. Uh, the way we diagnose mental illness, it's one of the extreme examples where you pretty much believe whatever the person is saying. I'm depressed. The doctor will say, okay, you are depressed. But then when you start analyzing further, there are, I guess, many forms of depression, etc., etc. And even without AI, we got there. But with AI, hopefully, we can maybe and combine it with some other scanning techniques, etc. You can um, take it much further. So if this medicine works for this depression, it will not. You'll know right now the understanding is, take Prozac and it's all good for all depressions. But then once you know there are 100 types of depression, then you'll say, okay, it only works for these two. So yeah, I think will revolutionize it, but it's very complex because there are how many medical professionals really know AI right now? And
Yeah.
usually at your high school level, you either go towards medical sciences or you go towards engineering sciences or some of the others, and those two don't come together very often. And because of the potential of application, I'm sure the two
Yeah.
founders with different skills will come together, and all those things are already happening. Many investors are like there are funds that will only invest in various medical sciences. I mean, there are other problems or rather things that give investors a stop, and is the regulation, etc. So fewer and fewer. There are like a smaller set of investors who go towards those regulated areas where things go inside your body.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Because uh, like our PI is trying to do some AI stuff in our lab as well. But the problem we had was like, it's hard to, like really know like the what AI people are doing. Like we wanted to apply that, but it's kind of hard. So, yeah, that's a very interesting point.
Let me
And
give you explain that with another example I'm familiar with. Right, I
okay,
was
cool.
working on this recruiting software, generative AI recruiting thing, right, at Sprouts AI.
Mm.
When we go to a customer, um, it's very hard for the customer to use it because generative AI by default it has some error rate. Now, if you're familiar with the tool, you know where things go wrong, etc., and you take advantage of that 95% thing that works and ignore the 5%. The moment you go to a customer, they don't know which 5% is wrong, and so you can create a big mess. And this is application of generative AI. When you
Mm.
go to the actual model, things are 100 times more complex in understanding. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
we are at the
It's
Mercor,
very
back end.
useful.
Go ahead. I think
Jane,
who's
look
Vivek?
up Cellworks. Cellworks is a company that we looked at. Cellworks is they tried building an artificial cell, and Sequoia, Artiman Ventures, all of them invested in it, but it didn't go anywhere. Like what Rishikesh was saying, ultimately is like, okay, can you make a drug faster, right? So they modeled the virtual cell, but ultimately the proof is basically, can you actually like give me a drug and sort of extend or make my time to market faster, right? And that's where I think any of these virtual cell models are not going to work, right? But I think specific use cases like AlphaFold, right? It's basically like pretty much all crystallographers that I've spoken to, they feel like it can predict pretty well what the folding structure is, right? So when I was doing my PhD in protein folding and physics, it was a problem, but now that's not a problem anymore at all, right? So I think certain problems you can use AI to solve, but like, and I think one of the things, and I don't want to go too much into philosophy as well, but certain things, especially in biology, are deterministic but non-computable. So you're going to reach that level where some things are like just not computable, right? How much of our information you can throw at it at some level. You should look up this book. It's called The Origins of Order by Stuart Kauffman. He talks about autocatalytic systems and how they work with each other. Read that book. That'll sort of give you an idea of like how these things work and how investors look at it. But yeah, my general feeling is certain things are just not computable. So they might be deterministic, but they might not be computable.
Okay, so we just need to determine what the field is best for the current stage and like how useful the AI is in terms of, like, okay, thank you so much. That's very helpful.
Yeah. Pushkar, you want to put the book in the comments so that others can also take it here? Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
The
I think we are
origins
open
of
for one last. Yeah. The Origins of Order.
yeah.
Yeah, by Stuart Kauffman.
Stuart Kauffman. Yeah, we're open for one last question. We are almost on time, but happy to take one last question from anyone. No?
So
yeah,
Rishikesh,
floor to
since
you,
I'm a
I
Vivek.
want to
guy,
make a comment. I saw this meme recently where, there's this manager asking his employee, "Oh, we are having trouble growing or whatever, whatever." And two employees says, "Okay, throw AI." And the third one says, "Focus on what customer wants." And this poor guy gets thrown out of the building. So I think if you do that, your startup is not going to grow. You really have to obsess with your customer. At the end of
Which
the
is
day,
always true. Yeah, that's the traditional.
generative AI is a very good tool, but you cannot ignore the customer.
100%. Yeah, Vivek, you're saying something?
yeah, I was going to ask Rishikesh, did you look at the AI and quantum at all? Have you looked in that space at all since I do quantum? Have you even looked at quantum and AI?
Yes,
And
for TiCon this year, I helped put together a quantum track and a panel. We had a quantum workshop where people actually got to do a little programming on the IBM's quantum computer. So I have looked at it briefly, although in terms of understanding what exactly it is, etc., in terms of technical, I would say my understanding is very basic.
yeah,
But
no,
were
we
there
just
AI in quantum applications? That's what Vivek is asking. Were there applications of AI
yeah,
in
no,
quantum?
I was just curious. Like, yeah, I'll talk to you, Rishikesh. I mean, we have a lot of people in common, so we can
Yeah.
talk. But I work for Transpose, so Transpose is a $2.5 billion fund, and I'm heading up their quantum investments. So
Yeah, it's
we're basically
definitely fascinating. I mean, uh, if you think about various computes, right? At one corner, you have one human Intel x86 architecture, and then you have GPU, which is still general purpose, but it brings the parallelism. And then you have TPUs, which take it to the other extreme, but sacrificing a lot of things that your general processors can do. So it gets very limited for specific algorithms, etc. And then you have, so before I go to, and quantum computer is completely different, right? And now GPU has been around for a long time, but it's now that it's really making money for NVIDIA and others, right? I think quantum computer is where NVIDIA was like 20 years ago.
Yep.
And And we don't know all the applications and how to make it work. What's the ecosystem going to be like? And so all that thing is kind of shaping up right now. And it may not happen in the next 5 years, but more than that, it has to happen, I think.
Yeah,
it has
for
to be a
sure.
big
That's,
market.
yeah, that's the investment thesis. And I think the way we are thinking about it is QPUs, GPUs, and CPUs will work together. Like it can be an independent modality, right? And we're already seeing that with NVIDIA and their whole NVLink, which they're connecting to quantum computers, right? So a lot of, I mean, ultimately the answer has to be classical, right? I mean, you can run everything on a quantum machine, but the answer is classical, right? Because 0 or 1s is how you can, we and you and the world can read it, right? So whatever computation, ultimately the answer still has to be in classical, in the classical realm. So yeah, it'll be interesting. And now people are using GPUs for error correction, right? Which is the biggest problem right now. So yeah, we can talk some more. Yeah,
Would
we
love
probably
to,
have a
yes.
lot of people. Yeah. Did you work with Vijay Arun at all at TIE?
Yes, but I was on the marketing side of marketing TiECon, so I used to interact with all the track leaders, many speakers to essentially promote the event itself. So yes, but not really that closely.
Okay, yeah, we'll catch up. So
Sure. Thanks, Vivek, and thanks, Rishikesh. Last update about Rishikesh. He's getting an award from his alma mater, IIT Mumbai, this month. So congrats on that, Rishikesh, and really
Thank you.
enjoyed this session. Yeah. Thanks, everyone, for
which batch are
joining
you?
this.
Rishikesh, which batch? IIT Bombay. When did you graduate?
97.
Oh, 97. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Vinay, any closing comments?
Thank you.
Nothing from me, but extremely interesting, extremely interesting. Scale and ability to have young feet is probably the future. But that's an old man talking.
Good.
Yeah.
Thanks. Have a nice day and have a nice evening, everyone. Thanks for this. I'll share the recording also in the group. So it's our last session of 2025. See you in 2026 as Indo-US VC.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, maybe we'll talk about world models in 2026.
Okay. Thanks. Bye.